Can you believe it? A championship that came down to a single inch. A dynasty hanging by a thread. This is the story of the 2025 World Series, an absolutely epic 7-game showdown between the Dodgers and the Blue Jays that kind of redefined what we thought was possible in baseball. So we're going to break this whole thing down, but we're not starting at the beginning. No way. We are starting at the end, the absolute heart-stopping conclusion of Game 7, where the line between a dynasty and total heartbreak was thinner than a single stitch on a baseball.
You know, it's easy to call any great series a classic, but this was different. And it's not just a feeling, the data actually proves that this wasn't just a great championship. It was statistically one of the most exciting and dramatic postseasons ever played. I mean, this timeline barely even captures the chaos of those final innings. Think about it. Top of the ninth, Dodgers are down to their last out, and utility man Miguel Rojas, of all people, hits an unbelievable home run to tie it up. Then, bottom half, the Blue Jays load the bases. The championship is just 90 feet away, but a chopper and an absolutely perfect throw gets the out at the plate by a literal inch. It sends the game to extras where finally, a Will Smith homer and a crazy double play mercifully ended it all.
So how do you even measure pure, uncut sports drama? Well, analysts actually have a metric for it. Cumulative Championship Win Probability Added, or CWPA. Basically, you can think of it as a net excitement score. And for the entire 2025 postseason, that score was a staggering 2,702.
And to really put that number into perspective, just look at this. The 2025 postseason wasn't just exciting. It was statistically the most dramatic, most volatile postseason on record. It didn't just break the old record, it completely shattered it.
And all that record-breaking excitement? Yeah, it came with a pretty serious real-world price tag. The minimum ticket price just to get in the door for Game 7 in Toronto soared over $1,600 US. That makes it one of the most expensive and sought-after Game 7s of this century.
So this victory, it wasn't just another win. It was a coronation. It cemented the Los Angeles Dodgers not just as champions, but as a true modern baseball dynasty.
But you might be thinking, well, of course the Dodgers won, but how inevitable was it really? Before the 2024 season even began, if you ran the numbers on the Dodgers winning that year and the next, the combined probability of them pulling off a back-to-back championship was just a little over 6%. So yeah, they were a favorite, but it was far from a sure thing.
You know, repeating as champions is one of the hardest things to do in modern sports. The playoffs are so much longer now, the path is way harder, and a single bad bounce can just end your whole season. To be the first team in a quarter century to go back-to-back, that isn't just impressive, it's historic.
And when you zoom out, wow, the picture of this dynasty, it just gets even clearer. Over the last 9 years, they're on a 101-win pace, they've made 5 trips to the World Series, and they've won 3 of them. I mean, that is the definition of sustained, relentless excellence.
But here's the thing, right? This trophy wasn't just won by the superstars on those 9-figure contracts. When the series was really on the line, the biggest moments actually belonged to the most unexpected players on the entire roster.
And this is where the story gets really, really interesting. Yeah, the big money stars like Yamamoto and Smith, they delivered. But the stats show who really swung the series? The players who added the most win probability in the most critical moments were Miguel Rojas and Will Klein, guys earning the league minimum. It just proves that their depth is every bit as valuable as their star power.
Now, of course, you absolutely cannot talk about heroes without mentioning the just superhuman performance of Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He became the first pitcher since 2001 to win 3 games in a single World Series. After a complete game in Game 2 and saving their season in Game 6, he came out of the bullpen on 0 days rest to get the final 8 outs of Game 7. As his teammate Shohei Ohtani put it, Yamamoto is the world's #1 pitcher. Hard to argue with that.
Okay, so even with all those legendary performances, this series is always going to be remembered for the moments that were so small, so microscopic, that they just remind you of the beautiful and sometimes brutal randomness of baseball.
So here's what the Blue Jays base runner, Isiah Kiner-Falefa, said about that huge play. You know, the ground ball on the bottom of the ninth where he got thrown out at home. He said he was being cautious, following coaching instructions to avoid getting doubled off on a line drive. And you know what? That sounds perfectly logical, right?
But the data, Oh man, the objective data tells a brutal, heartbreaking story. That caution, it translated into one of the shortest primary and secondary leads taken by any base runner in the entire World Series. He was doing what he was told, playing it safe, but that tiny fraction of a second, that single inch, that was the entire difference between a Blue Jays championship and going home with nothing. A game of inches, indeed.
So, after all that, what's the big takeaway from this epic series? It wasn't just about the inches and the heroes. This Dodgers victory forces all of us to ask a much bigger and maybe more controversial question about the state of baseball today.
Look, with a team payroll that just absolutely dwarfs most of the league, it is the obvious question on everyone's mind. Did all their financial might just make this outcome inevitable? Did they buy it?
And the thing is, the answer isn't a simple yes or no. On one hand, you cannot ignore the staggering financial gap. I mean, the difference in payroll between these two teams was the size of another entire playoff team's payroll. But on the other hand, Toronto was no small market underdog. And across 7 games, the Dodgers were actually out-hit and outscored. Money clearly buys you a ticket to the dance, but this series proved it can't guarantee you're going home with the trophy. So, what's a win like that actually worth to the players themselves? Well, beyond the trophy and the bragging rights, each Dodger is going to take home an estimated $500,000 in playoff bonus money alone. A pretty fitting reward for a title that came down to the final inch.
So look, this victory was anything but preordained. But it does leave us with one last massive question. With $1 billion in revenue, a top-ranked farm system, and a proven ability to win time and time again, the Dodgers have built a sustainable advantage that's unlike almost anything we've seen in decades. So as they start the chase for a three-peat, we have to wonder, was this the peak of their dynasty, or is it just the beginning?